On today's episode of Let's Grow Together, I talk with my good friend Michael Locasto, and he is a former athletic, a strength and conditioning trainer for the Diamondbacks. And we go into some really deep level mind thinking about what is in between your brain and how can we perform at the highest level with your thoughts and focusing on there. And then we do go into the body as well and how we can perform at our best. We talk about meditation. There's so much power in this episode, and I know that you're going to enjoy it. So, without further ado, let's dive in. But first, the intro. Welcome to Let's Grow Together. My name is Nick Monotadibus, motivational speaker and digital marketing strategist. And this podcast is all about helping you grow both in life and business. Let's dive in. I am so pumped, so excited. This individual, him and I met through a mutual friend, and we went on a nice long run that I intentionally did not look at my watch and how long we were going for. But we had such an incredible conversation on this run. And, once we had that conversation, I knew that I had to have you on my podcast and really just diving in to your insights. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Yes, Nick, thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely. I'm excited. So real quick, tell us a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm a high performance mindset and energy coach for athletes, but I also work with business executives and leaders as well. I started off in the world of strength and conditioning. So ever since I was 14, I wanted to work with professional athletes in the weight room. And I had my own journey dealing with back injuries and ended up getting a job 4 years ago with the Arizona Diamondbacks, 5 years ago now. But as I was standing in the weight room coaching athletes, I realized that this was actually my comfort zone. So I found the weight room at a young age because, well, first of all, it made me come alive. It was like a kid walking into a candy store, and it ended up being my comfort zone. So here I am coaching athletes, baseball players specifically, on how to elevate their game. And I realized I was coaching it from my comfort, me feeling adequate in the weight room. And reflecting on my own experience, I realized that I was one of the hardest workers in the weight room. Yet the only time I didn't perform was when I was scared, when I had a coach in college that, quite frankly, he intimidated me. So upon reflection of my own journey, my own weaving, I realized that these guys, they don't need to necessarily lift heavier to be better at their sport. And it made me go into the world of the mind and dove into that world. And I realized, wow, holy crap, this is actually where high performance starts. And if you get it right, everything else gets taken care of. So I help athletes with the 6 inches between their ears, but more importantly, their energy. Because I know that when you get your energy right, your thoughts correspond.
Love it. Amazing. High performance starting in the mind. So when you say energy, how does one improve their energy?
It's a loaded question, brother. Where do you want to start?
Start at where you feel is the most important place to start.
Yeah. I like the distinction of, so I use this quote by Einstein. He says, the most important decision you can make is whether you live in a friendly or a hostile universe. So really what he's speaking to is we can either come from this world of fear or this world of love. So if underlying in our subconscious, so our subconscious mind is below our level of thinking. So if we think of everything that has happened in our past, every experience, every heartbreak, every triumph, every meaning we created to anything in our world, that is our subconscious. Like our heart beats without us telling it to, blood moves into our muscles without us telling it to. That is the subconscious. So where I really start is with the idea, like, where is my client when they're coming to me? What are those beliefs that they can't necessarily see, but are influencing how they show up? So for me, when I was in college and I came from this place of fear, I would step into the box and it would quite literally, it looked like, holy crap, don't strike out. So now, if that is my mindset, I could practice as hard as I want. What's happening when I step into the box is my body is actually in a state of contraction. There's this underlying tension. And I don't know if you're a human being and you've ever been nervous and you had to go do something, you would realize that your performance was not as good as you would want it to be.
I love it. And it starts with that intention. You know, when you quoted Einstein, I love that because, you know, there's key words in there, you know, in that quote that you shared. One being decide. You decide which environment you want to be in. It's not that this is where you are. You have that choice. It's not your actual physical surrounding. It's not the things going on. It's making the choice in your own mind of where you want to be when you're setting yourself up and you're in these situations. And I love that you use the example of baseball, which is fantastic. I mean, I played baseball well, I guess I can't say my whole life anymore because I don't play anymore. But you know, I played for you know, all through college and growing up as a young kid. That was, you know, my family bleeds baseball. And you know, using that example, walking up to the plate and don't strike out. That's the exact opposite. You know, it's like, it's one of those things when you tell yourself like what not to do, your energy goes to where your focus is, you know?
Yeah.
And so through this energy process, you know, and really refocusing on how we can prepare, how can we check where we're at from our energy state in a place of like, are we in a good place? Or are we in a bad? Like, is there a practice that you use to really be like, all right, where am I at on my energy level and my focus level?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well, brother. But I want to bring up something. You brought something up so important, is we have the choice. And I didn't know when I was younger that I had the choice. So through this process of personal development, growth, expansion, you understand, or speaking about me, I understood that the power is in the mind. The power is in our thoughts. So if we want to check ourselves with where we're at with our energy, it all starts with awareness. Awareness is always the answer. Now, how do we become aware? Well, we are aware. How do we learn about awareness? Well, it's like trying to teach someone what an avocado tastes like, and they've never had an avocado. Like, what is this thing, awareness? Right? A fish doesn't know it's in water until it's been taken out. We are aware by default by being a human being. But what is this thing of awareness that is really controlling our life? You said where our attention goes, energy flows, right? So how do we start to expand awareness? And for me, it started with meditating when I was, I think it was my first year in pro ball. And I just got in a job with the Diamondbacks. And unfortunate for me, my girlfriend broke up with me prior to coming to Arizona. So I was in Miami for grad school and she broke up with me. And here I am in this pain. It was the worst pain of my entire life. So ironically, I stumbled upon meditating, and I meditated from this place of, man, I have to feel better. This is miserable in here inside my skin. So I started meditating and I realized it made me feel better. So through meditating, I have been able to I identify and discover this world of energy. And really our energy is made up of how we think and how we feel. So if we can bring our awareness to our thoughts and to our feelings, I think that is a great place to start. What is our relationship with our thoughts? And what is our relationship with feeling?
Wow. I love that. Specifically, what is our relationship with our thoughts? That question alone is super powerful. Because one thing that I noticed in regards to everything that happened with COVID and the dramatic world and the change that happened in 2020 is that people were distracted. They had all these things going on in their life, and they had this. They're taking the kids to practice, or they're doing football, or they're doing this, and they're just going through the motions. And then all of a sudden, they are now stuck with their own thoughts.
Yeah.
And people had to go through some people went through some tough struggles during this because of what was happening, being with their own thoughts. And really that conversation that we have. And I think that's so powerful. And I love meditation. I think it's such a cool practice to be able to get into. For you, what does your meditation practice look like?
Brother, I bet it's looked a lot differently of recent, but yeah, I think for me, my meditation practice right now looks like getting up and sitting either in silence, or I use Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've been doing his work since 2018. He is he's a beautiful soul. I first came across him in 2018 because well, not because my one of my athletes offered me a podcast from him. And during this season, we had 7 hamstring injuries in Jackson, Tennessee, AA for the Diamondbacks. And if you know the number 7 is not a good number when it comes to injuries, especially when it's the exact same injury. So I was worried for my job. I thought for sure this was going to be my last year in baseball. I'm like, why would they keep me? Why would they keep this kid in Jackson, Tennessee when he can't keep his athletes healthy? So my athlete got me introduced to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and his meditations are pretty in depth. I would recommend starting with a podcast first, but yeah, I spend a lot of time meditating. Whenever I feel like my energy is off here or there, I'll go meditate. So I spend a lot of time, brother.
Love it. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a default in certain situations and how you want to utilize it. And it's funny that you mention, what am I saying? The Dr. Dispenzo. Did I say that right?
Dispenza.
Dispenza. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we'll put the info in the show notes. But you had mentioned to James, like, hey, you got to listen to this podcast episode. And then James was like, dude, you got to listen to this podcast episode. So our mutual friend, James, he passed it on to me. And I did listen to that episode, and I don't recall it, which makes me think, all right, well, you clearly weren't present enough. But I remember listening to it and being like, wow, this is super powerful. I just can't remember any specifics from it. Now, I am curious from, like, you mentioned, like, you meditate in certain situations. Is it like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or like, do you have a, like, hey, I wake up, drink coffee and meditate? Or is it just more of a, hey, when I feel like I need to meditate and the energy's off, then I bring it?
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. So I used to have like a very strict morning routine where I would wake up and I would meditate 45 minutes to an hour. And through COVID made me relearn everything. It was like, all right, I left the strength and conditioning world. I'm going to teach people, athletes specifically, how to meditate, how to do breath work, how to create a morning routine, how to create a competition routine, basically how to design their day. That was what I was going to do. And after COVID hit, I realized I went on my own journey with my own energy coach, and I had to unlearn everything. So what's the saying? What got you here won't get you there. So as I'm going through my own unlearning process, I realized that these strict containers that I was creating in my day were restricting me. So now what it looks like, really, I mean, I meditate every time I get up, and it looks different. I follow my intuition as opposed to, all right, what does it need to look like? What am I trying to get out of meditating? Well, the ironic thing is you don't get anything. You actually, it's a detachment process. So by meditating, you actually become freer. So I'll give you brought up the example of so many people in distraction over COVID. I was speaking with this girl who, she was really struggling because she's used to working in athletic training room, coaching, working with athletes. And she called me up and she was really struggling because here she is not working with athletes and she's sitting at home alone. So her relationship with her own thoughts was unhealthy at the time. So she called me and she had just went on a date. So like a COVID date where she was 6 feet apart or whatever into the park with some guy, and she was judging how the date went. And she was judging it because she felt like she was talking the entire time. So rewind, here she is on the couch and she can't be with her own thoughts because it's so noisy. Such a common thing, right? And rewind again, when she was 5 years old, she had her relationship with her father is if her father wasn't talking to her and she wasn't talking to him, she felt an absence of love. So when it was silent, she felt an absence of love. So her relationship with this busy mind is, in order to feel and experience love, she needs to be talking. So where love and where freedom and where she wants to feel self-worth and acceptance exists is in stillness and in silence. So when we can settle the mind, settle the body, we actually get access to our signal. And that is where, I don't know, happiness, joy, peace, anything you could ever want resides.
That is amazing. And that's such a cool example and story to share. And to see the underlying root, where you're able to trace and uncover something that was deep rooted into, hey, I had a bad date. And it's like, and then it traces back to her as a childhood having conversations with her father. I mean, that's such an incredible realization. And I love that you mentioned like meditation is detachment, because I don't know if I've ever heard it described that way. And I find that so fascinating, because it is feeling that, because the whole idea is that you're like not thinking about other things. So you're detaching yourself from, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, I need to be better, I need all of these things that run through our head, and being able to take a moment, detach, remove ourselves from that, and refocus. And from, and you talked about joy and how he can bring that joy and happiness. It's from that level of being present, and meditation is a practice of being present, because that's where worry, fear, all these horrible things, they only come from the future or the past.
Yeah.
And so the only way, and so in the present though, it's only joy. only
Mm,
happiness.
mm.
Such an incredible, fascinating aspect of how we can create the magic that comes behind stillness and silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible. So some of your you mentioned you're a big habits person, regardless if you have that strict routine, because I do love that you mention because I was the same way. I was like, I gotta have these strict habits. But then you feel handcuffed
Yeah.
to your own habits, and then now your habits become chains instead of the tool that they're meant to be used. Now, I'm curious,
Mm.
what are some other activities, and they don't have to be a strict morning routine activities, but things that you do in addition to meditation that are, fundamental for for you to perform at your highest level?
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good question too. Brother, you're all over this. Your listening skills are on point, my man. Come on. Yeah, as far as habits, where am I at now? So I do a lot of barefoot walking. I do a lot of grounding just to feel connected to the earth. So if you think of a lot of us humans, including myself, we get caught up in our analyzer in our mind. So walking barefoot, whether that's on cement or even better, walking in soil, grass, helps you just be rooted. So it gets you back into your body. So I'm big into doing habits that get me back into my entire body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if we put our awareness up between our ears and we're stuck with our awareness here, well, we have this rest of the body that we can sense and feel that has information for us. So grounding, I drink a lot of water thanks to my energy coach. I do breath work, meditating. I put on music. So music's a great way to change your state into there's now certain frequencies that you can play on YouTube that will bring you into a calmer state just by the sound.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Frequencies? What kind of sounds are we talking about here? Like, is this like a meditation type of sound? Or are we talking like radio waves? Because I've never heard of anything like this. This is super fascinating.
Yeah. So this is Dr. Joe Dispenza's world. But yeah, I mean, when you listen to meditation music, what happens? How do you feel?
Pretty calm. It
Yeah.
brings you to a good, relaxed state as long as I'm like listening to it, or trying
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah. So there's the idea is that certain sounds and frequencies speak to your body. So if in the world of physics, everything that we see is energy and energy vibrates. So like fear vibrates at a certain frequency. So does love. So does joy. So does peace. So sound actually can default your body into a more peaceful state, which is super cool.
Yeah. Wow. I
Yeah.
never heard of that level or thought, but from the to circle back on the whole grounding aspect,
Yeah.
that is something that I feel most people do not appreciate enough
Mm,
or try to put in, and me included, which is why I bring that up in incorporating that into more a regular basis. Because when I was this past summer, I was living at my parents' before I moved to San Diego. And I remember being outside and on the grass, and it was like a Saturday and it's beautiful. And
yeah.
it wasn't just my feet. I mean, I got on my hands and knees and I put my hands
Yeah.
into the grass. And I remember thinking that I was like high, like it was like almost like a
Yeah.
euphoric feel of being completely sober because I felt this connection to the earth by
Yeah.
opening myself up and really grounding myself in that grass.
Mm.
Do you have a similar experience when you ground yourself?
Yeah, brother. It's like, it's so cool to listen to you tell that story, because it just reminds me that we are connected with nature. We're not separate. So when we go out in nature, I know my experience when I'm out in the woods or I'm out climbing a mountain, it's freedom. It's like, wow, I can actually breathe out here. So it is something that I've worked on. Now I was fortunate to be training for that race last year. So I was out on the trails quite often, which I fell in love. I fell in love with nature and just being out there. And it's the experience of it is quite connected. Like you feel a connection to the world, to nature. And that to me is where I think the world is working its way back to.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
think about, matter and getting from the more scientific standpoint and, what do they say? Matter is nor created or destroyed, or is that atoms? I don't know, but you get the point where,
Yeah.
we are all connected from that standpoint of energy, atoms, molecules, however you're seeing it. And
Yeah.
I think the level of being able to connect is just simply by having the openness and being willing
Mm.
to connect. Like for me, that was just the biggest moment I had ever connected to it. But I think there's been smaller moments that I didn't even notice. Like as you were talking, I was thinking about other times that I've connected, and it was like going to the beach. Like, and I have this thing with the beach is like whenever I go and I sit down, I always have to have a chair. And the
Yeah.
reason being is because I like to shovel my feet, like,
Mm.
and dig a hole with my feet in the sand. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me connecting and me just like feeling the sand in my toes. And, sometimes I feel the sand in my hands and just like going through it. It's just there's a euphoric feeling when you just are really connecting
Mm.
to the earth. And I think if we can create as this a regular routine, it's just going to have greater impact. And one thing you had mentioned is hiking and things of that sort. But the first thing that came up for me was I think it's important that when we are connecting that you're taking your shoes off when you go on that hike.
Mm.
I went
Yeah.
with I went with one of my friends and we went on a hike, and we stumbled upon this kind of lake area water, and he just said I had to put my feet in. And I was like, okay, well, I can do that. Next thing you know, we're basically just we went all in and full body cold plunge. It
There you
wasn't
go.
super cold, but it was like, yeah, we went all in. And we could probably that's probably a great transition into the cold water and the cold water
Oh,
plunge.
yes.
So before we jumped on recording, Michael and I were talking about how that the cold water plunge and how that can be beneficial for your body. Now, you mentioned, but we didn't get into it too much, like the chemical, the ability for that to be beneficial. What are the benefits of a cold plunge in that regard?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the mind, because I like starting with the mind.
Love it.
'Cause,
Love it.
so as far as the cold tub goes, or even a cold shower, cold environments, the first thing that happens when let's say we're in the shower and we're turning that knob down, the first thing that happens is we have a voice that tells us, oh hell no, you're not turning that thing down. So I actually got this from Aubrey Marcus's book. He calls it mental override. So that voice that tells us not to do something, the first benefit is overriding that voice. The second benefit we get from that is I like to think of it as a tool to start training the mind. It's like meditating, but using bumpers. So if we're bowling, it's like bowling with bumpers, because the cold forces you to narrow the mind, to create an intention, because if you're thinking about how cold it is, you're just going to turn it off. So it forces you to slow the breath. And as you slow the breath, you notice that your mind gets calmer as well. And now I like using things as a way to relate. So what is our relationship with the cold? Because our nervous system is going to tell us that this is going to kill us, quite literally, right? It's a bit dramatic, but it's the truth. That is the response of the nervous system. And if you know that you're not going to die and you can be with the discomfort, now you have context to bring into somewhere else. Maybe you have a big talk. Maybe you have a big performance. Whatever the case may be, that anxiety or fear that is present, now we have a tool. We've already started to train ourselves to override that voice that tells us we're going to fail, we're going to fall on our face, whatever it's telling us. So it's a great tool to bring us back into the present as well, and to just be in your body. So, and then there's a whole bunch of benefits as far as metabolism as well, but
interesting. Yeah, the metabolism, and I've seen, like, you know, there's the cold plunge, but then there's also the what is it, like nitrogen, or what am I thinking of, where it's not cold water, but it's, you get into a tank.
Oh yeah. Cryo.
Yeah. Have
I've
you ever
never
done that?
done cryo.
Yeah. I wonder what that experience is like.
No.
Wait, so how does it
Yeah,
affect your metabolism?
All right. So I learned this from, I believe it was Ben Greenfield. He's a healthcare professional. So as we're babies, we have what's called brown fat to protect our vital organs, like our heart, like our lungs, like our digestive system. So we have this brown fat that helps us create heat because we don't have enough muscles to keep our nerve, or to keep our body alive. So as babies, we have this brown fat. But as we start aging, this brown fat, we don't have a use for it, because now in the Western world, the world that we live in, most people aren't forcefully putting themselves in the cold, right? Because what happens, we bundle up in the wintertime in Chicago, right? Or we bundle up wherever we are in the wintertime. We go in our cars and we turn on the heat. We have the heater for our house. We never really expose ourselves to the cold. So what frequent cold exposure does is it actually increases the brown fat. And the cool thing with brown fat is it utilizes other fat cells, so white adipose tissue, to burn, to use as fuel. So now if you're someone that is wanting to lose weight, a cold tub, though it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable, is a great tool to help not only create a more robust metabolism, but also burn fat as well. So if I know Wim Hof is the guy to look into for this.
Right. Oh my gosh. So first off, I'm like super fascinated. I don't, you know, the video is recording, Michael, well, my mouth has like dropped in awe. Because that's just incredible to hear. I had no idea. I thought it was all mental focus. I had no idea that there was this level of utilizing it from the, you know, I never even heard of brown fat either. I mean, but to be able to speed up the metabolism through cold plunge, because you hear all these things. I mean, people are always trying the new diet or trying to lose weight. You don't hear many people being like, oh, just take cold showers, that'll help you lose weight, you know, like. I think that's super fascinating, and I love that you brought up Wim Hof, because I've done some of his breath work guided from somebody else. I would like to get into that more. And you did mention breath work earlier on the episode. And so I'm going to what's the difference for you when you're doing the breath work versus meditation? Because obviously meditation has some breath work, but I know Wim Hof
Mm,
has some like very interesting breath work techniques that are not your average meditation.
yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of science involved with breath work, and it's very individualized. So Wim Hof is doing breath and teaching you how to, um, I don't want to butcher the science over here, but we are not really good at getting CO2 into, or excuse me, extracting oxygen into our muscles because we're not good at holding on to CO2 in our body. So what Wim Hof breathing allows us to do is it allows us to not only extract more oxygen into our cells, but it also calms down our nervous system, because what most individuals do is when they breathe, they overbreathe. They overbreathe because they feel they haven't trained their CO2 to be able to hold on to CO2. Does that make sense? So I
Yeah,
don't want to go in any more detail there, but
fair enough.
as far as Wim Hof, that would be like a really good place to start training your nervous system to be in a calmer, more peaceful state in more intense environments.
Love it. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and
Yeah.
I kind of want to focus on one of the things that you mentioned earlier on in the episode too. You were talking about your fear, and you're scared of your coach. Now,
Yeah.
is that how are you able to overcome that? And also, is that something that is often an underlying truth in the work that you do with what yourself and your clients?
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, fear. What is my relationship with fear? My old relationship with fear was to contract and to be in a state of paralysis. So what fear does is it either we want to fight, flight, or freeze. My reaction was to freeze. So how did I overcome this? Well, ironically, I got involved with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the first thing that they speak about is this evaluation process. So during spring training, we're all together, 30 of us staff members, strength coaches, athletic trainers, PTs, big league, minor league. We all do this evaluation process. So anonymously, we write strengths, weaknesses, and comments on all 30 staff members. And then one day during the middle of the season, they send you in your inbox your feedback. In my first year in 2016, I remember reading these. And as I was reading them, of course, I only felt the weaknesses, like strengths, whatever. The ego's like, whatever to the strengths. But to the weaknesses, it felt like my teammates knew what was going on inside of me. And it looked like this guy looks uncomfortable in his skin. This guy comes in hot. This guy's so intense. He struggles communicating with people, etc. So that really took me on a journey, and the journey was inward to really figuring out what is my relationship with fear and what is fear. And from there, I've been able to now really get into the work that I do now. So fear comes online when we identify with being something. So if for me, I uncovered in my childhood an experience where I am not accepted, and here I am now meeting people, meeting my teammates, meeting new players, saying hi to all these people. My first reaction when I'm communicating is I'm not accepted. So I have to communicate in a way where this person accepts me. So through awareness, I realized, wait a second, I'm not accepted is made up in my own mind, in my own history. It's not even true. Like, in order for something to be true, it always has to be true. So I am not accepted is in the language. It's in wording, and wording programs us. So now here I am looking through the lens, the belief that I am not accepted. So it's one thing to identify the limiting belief, right? You hear a lot of people talk about breaking free from your limiting beliefs. Tony Robbins. I don't know if you've heard of Landmark.
I have heard of Landmark, haven't done the training though.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is like you can see your limiting beliefs. You can see how your perspective shapes your reality. But underlying, there's an energy. And until you clear the energy, until you feel, until I felt the energy of the consequence, the cost of living in a world where I'm not accepted, until I fully felt it was going to keep running its pattern. So it's one thing to identify the limiting belief. It's another completely to feel the emotions fully, without judgment, without the mind getting in the way. And now you're able to expand your identity. And from all the personal growth books I've ever read, the game is the most important thing that I've read is how do you expand your identity? How do you expand your self-image of yourself? And the quickest way that I found to do it is to feel without any judgment. And that looks like sitting in some dark emotions, some anger, some frustration, some embarrassment, some guilt, some shame. And that is the work I do now, because it's the stuff that we're not willing to look at. Well, let me rephrase that. Some of us are willing to look in it, but also some of us, we can't even see that this is the underlying energy that's at play here. All we notice is I'm nervous. I have anxiety. I need to go mask over this. Right. So if we can see our masks as really, you have a choice. You can fight for your limitations, your limiting beliefs, or you can use that energy that's going to those limiting beliefs and fight for your freedom in your future.
Love it. So powerful. I love that because, you're talking about diving in and tackling these things that we all want to ignore. It's like this dark and light side, but you cannot have light without the dark. Yeah. You can't just be all light. We need to make sure that we are able to tackle this darkness, because if we don't spend time in it, embrace it, then it's going to start to build. Yeah. And I love that. I love that, spending that time in those things. And I have to say, by the Diamondbacks, I mean, that is an incredible exercise. Like, as an employer, like, that is something that I would love to do with my future employees. Like, if I had a bunch of employees, like, to me, that's an incredible exercise, completely, anonymous, and getting that feedback, because I think, at the underlying root of that is really the feedback and how important it is for us, the feedback. But I think, I'm interested to hear again how well, you touched on it a little bit, but, and I'm curious how much you've worked through in receiving feedback and how you've been able to work through that.
Yeah. I think, well, that process, it was really everything in that moment. So I'm glad you pointed it out, because so many of us, when we ask for feedback, we really want to hear what we want to hear. So this really forces you to look at what other people think of you. And the biggest challenge and growth spot for me was to be able to see these evaluations from a place of non-judgment, and to really looking through the eyes that my teammates are just here to try and help me. So going back to detachment, it really is an exercise in detaching. This person isn't saying this, well, they might be, to judge, but that's another conversation. But if you can just be with whatever someone else says about you, that is their perspective. That's what they got going on over there. Does it serve you? That's the question. So for me, I think now I'm open to whatever feedback anyone has. However, I'm not going to listen to someone just because it's someone. Like I have to trust that they're in integrity with their word. And if then I trust them and they offer something to me, that's why I work with a coach, because I can't see what I can't see. When I trust and I know that someone has already done the work themselves, let's go. Let's fly. I don't want to sit in this crap. As crappy as it is crappy, but the transformation process it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful experience. And yeah, man.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's what the goal is. I mean, that's the goal of this show is transformation, being able to reflect on ourselves and grow. And if we're not willing to get deep and dirty in the mud, then we're not going to be able to grow. That's just, it's so critical, so this has been so awesome. And to, recap some of the things that we, talked about is the first thing, is the choice. We always have choices in our lives, and we can choose to feel like we're in a hostile environment or we're in a calm environment. And that was misquoted, but you can go back and listen to that quote from, I love it though. But I think that's so amazing, again, and having that choice, because the choice is within our mind, and the power is in our thoughts, and really being able to build and create that awareness and understanding that it's a practice. I love the example you used about like a fish doesn't realize it's in water until you take them out of water. And until we're able to actually work on our awareness, are we actually able to be more aware and be conscious about this effort, noticing things, noticing about ourselves, how we're responding in certain situations, how we're handling things, how we, talk to coworkers, how we do everything, how we talk to our people, starting to reflect, because only through that reflection are we able to continue to grow. And again, starts with that awareness. We talked about meditation and the impact and the power that meditation can do for you. I love you share this quote, "What got you here won't get you there." I love that. And it's so important for everyone, but especially business owners, in realizing that, and we talk a lot about habits on this show. And from a habit standpoint, it's, you may have had habits that got you when you were in the hustle and grind of starting your business. But once you have a business, then things are going to change. You're going to have new habits. What you did before is not going to get you to where you want to go. I mean, just having that reminder. You talked about stillness and silence, and that ties into the meditation and the importance of how we can utilize that, and grounding ourselves with walking in the nature and taking the time. And I'm absolutely going to do that. I am leaving this call today, and I'm going to the beach to ground myself in some sand, take advantage of that grounding, and really connect, and making that time on a regular basis to connect with the world and be open to connecting, because we are all connected. We talked about the cold tubs, the cold showers, and like what that can do. I mean, that blew my mind, that there is, I knew the mental thing, but to talk about the actual physical aspect of, burning calories is super fascinating. I might actually have to jump in the cold ocean today as well to get that cold water, get it moving and burn some calories. And then we tackled fear, man. And I appreciate you being so open and willing to share that and your experience with the Diamondbacks, and how you were confronted with all of these things that people thought about you, strengths and weaknesses. And I totally agree that, when you mention when we ask for feedback, we really just want people to tell us how great we are. And so it's such a funny concept, and it's so true. And I think we have to, when we set the intention of being like, hey, I want you to be completely open and honest with me. Don't tell me what I want to hear, really, and be ready and be open to receive that feedback is so important, so we can get deep in the mud and uncover these things, these obstacles and challenges that we have in our life, so that we can continue to grow.
Wow. Brother, that was a recap right there. That's a mic drop right there.
Oh man, the recap is a new thing. I hope the listeners are enjoying it. Let me know, because I think it's cool to kind of recycle through that. And I mean, man, but that's all you, man. Like, look at all this amazing content, and incredible things for us to reflect on, for me to reflect on. My favorite thing is when I have guests that really allow me to reflect on my own journey, because I know if I can take it and reflect on my own self and learn to implement it into my life, that is going to be beneficial for all the listeners. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Brother, thank you so much for having me here. Your listening skills are impeccable. That was incredible. It's been an honor to be on your show.
Love it. Real quick, all right. Mm-hmm. One quick thing is, do you have a book that you absolutely love and recommend more than any other book? Like, it's your go-to book?
Wow. This answer has changed quite a few times, but I have to go back to the book and the person that changed my life more than anything else. And that was Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Love it. Perfect. That'll be next on my list. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I think I've heard that book before, actually, now hearing the title. And I don't know if it was from you mentioning it. That's possible, from when we hung out. But that just sounds right up.
Can I give you one other book as well?
Absolutely. It's so hard for somebody to give one. It's the funniest thing.
I know. I was like, oh, wait a second. This is the book I give the most people. It's The Untethered Soul. So this is the book I offer to most people. Soul. Michael A. Singer.
Michael A. Singer. Love it. Love it. Awesome. And then the last thing is, what's the best place for somebody to check you out, get in touch with you, follow you?
Yeah. So I have my website, Michael Locasto, LOCASTO.com. And then Instagram, I'm pretty active on there. Michael.Locasto is my handle. And then one of my buddies told me to get on TikTok. So maybe you'll see me bouncing around on TikTok one of these days. But
hey, man, Clubhouse is where you got to get on.
Oh, that's what I hear. I hear Clubhouse is where to go as well.
Dude, TikTok, no.
Yeah.
Clubhouse. Yeah. Love it.
And lastly, I have a podcast as well. It's called Top of Your Game Podcast. And that is specifically for athletes, high performers that want to rise to the top of their game. So
love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick.
And thank you, listeners. As always, remember, let's keep growing together. Wait. One more thing. I would first like to say thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this message, please take a moment to write a review. By writing a review, it helps people find this message and helps me help more people. And if you really, really liked it and you think this message could help someone else, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and please tag me at Nick J. Boni, NickJBoni, so I can show my appreciation for you. We can all win by helping each other grow. Thank you. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.